Today is August 20th, 2024, and we are at the City of Cape Canaveral Community Redevelopment Agency, CRA Special Board Meeting at the City Hall Council Chambers, 100 Polk Avenue, Cape Canaveral, Florida. I call this meeting to order. And with that, Vice Chair Kellum, would you please lead us in the pledge?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. City Clerk, please call the roll.
Board Member Davis?
Here.
Board Member Jackson?
Here.
Vice Chairperson Kellum? Chairperson Morrison?
Here.
Board Member Willis?
Here.
Thank you all for being here, board members and those of city staff and the public, and I believe those who might be live streaming today. As I said, this is a Community Redevelopment Agency, CRA Special Board Meeting, and we are at the public participation of the meeting. If anyone who intends to speak, please, come forward, fill out a card, and provide it to us, and we'll make sure you're heard. And those of you listening online, if you intend to speak, we just ask you to please raise your hand. I will unmute you and give you an opportunity to be heard. With that, I do not see any cards up here. If anyone intends to speak, please raise your hand. Seeing none, and those online listening, ask the same to please raise your hand. Seeing no hands raised, we'll go ahead and bring it back to this board. Close public participation. We have one new business item here today, which is to discuss the CRA budgetary priorities and the draft fiscal year 24-25 CRA budget. Unless council has any initial comments or anything we want to say, I'd like to hand it over to
Registered agent.
the registered agent. Thank you. The floor is yours.
This meeting was called because at the last city council meeting, there was discussion about the Oak Lane capital project. Could it be funded by the CRA, or at least the portion of it that was in the general fund, could it be funded by the CRA? And based on city attorney's correspondence and my reading of the statute, yes, it is not precluded from that $550,000 portion of this of Oak Lane being funded from the CRA, and the council being sensitive to the membership being called for the CRA board meeting, decided to schedule this meeting. So here we are to start talking about that, but it was also more about the CRA priorities in general. Mia, if we could go to page 122 of the budget, that will get us right to the 6 projects that are currently in the draft CIP for the CRA. And as I mentioned, there are 6 projects currently in the proposed CRA for 24-25, totaling $3,008,000. Yeah, and so it's page 122. It's okay. And I want to note that John DeLeo, who is not here tonight, but Joey, thank you for being here, for answering any questions. John DeLeo responded to my request for information. In the case the council does decide to go to rollback, how much additional money needs to come out of the CRA if we go to rollback? And he responded that it's $117,000 less in the CRA. So if Mia's there at 122, and you see there in the 24-25 column, there's $3,008,000 in expenditures in the draft proposed CRA budget for next fiscal year. So we know that $117,000 would have to come out of that if we go to rollback. We could decide a line item, or just maybe we could categorize these expenditures. But also, if we're going to do Oak Lane, we should specify it in here as a $550,000 expenditure and decide what to remove or what to reduce by that $550,000. So all told, 550 plus 117, that's 600 and, what's my math on there? 550 plus 117, 667 needs to come out of the CRA. And then decide how, if we want to do the other items in there. For instance, CR1 is the Canaveral City Park redevelopment of $12,000. Civic Hub, CR2, had $1,050,000, and that was supposed to be for stormwater initiatives in first phase of construction. CR3 is the presidential streets at $1.6 million. CR4, the traffic safety public art installation at $15,000. CR5 is Canaveral Fire Rescue Enhanced Lightning Protection System of $16,000. And finally, CR6, Canaveral City Park Concession Stand of $315,000. So I wanted to also remind the CRA Board that last time the board met, the board requested 2 proposals from Kimley Horn, which we just recently got back, and therefore the design of the first presidential street, which was Fillmore, and also for the design of the stormwater component of the Civic Hub. Those proposals are ready, and we will definitely schedule those for the regular CRA meeting in September to be presented there. This is more about budgetary priorities and what we want to do in the CRA. Those are more specific. That
CRA expenditures as of today and this is based on the, what we call it, I think, the middle of the road.
No,
rate?
this was, I'm sorry, this was the CIP workshops that we did came up with these prices.
But it was these,
Joey, were these adjusted since then?
okay. Rollback is, I just had it, 3. How much below rollback is that?
If it was to the rollback number, it would be 60,000, about 61,000. Would be lost to the CRA.
So if we're basically losing 61, at rollback rate, we would lose $61,000 in revenue that would normally come to the CRA, and so we would have to cut out 61,000. But the current rate that we're at now, or that was proposed, would have been able to fund these $9.8 million in projects. When the budget was initially brought.
The top number, yes.
So we only need to remove $61,000 out of 9.8 million?
Well, these, Joey, correct me if I'm wrong, these are the numbers that from the CIP that were in the first original proposed draft budget, which was a millage rate something above higher than middle of the road. So when it was adjusted, when it was approved at middle of the road, these numbers weren't reduced. Is that correct?
One of them was, I forget
Mr.
which one off the
Mr.
top
Chair?
of my head.
Yes, sir.
I
Presidential
believe the presidential streets, we brought that down to 1.2.
That is correct, yeah.
Okay, so this was adjusted for middle of the road then?
These numbers, I can actually pull them up right here to confirm.
But I think you're correct. I think, as Councilmember Willis says, you'd take off 400,000, and maybe there's a few other things, but it would bring that 24-25 down to 2.6, just,
Roughly, yeah. I just remember 1.2 being brought up and said that the next book we got would adjust down those numbers in the September book that we get.
another way to ask it is, what would the total fiscal year 24-25 expenditures be if it's not $3,008,000?
Roll back.
Yeah, or whatever it was, the 3.2, if that's below rollback or at rollback, definitely would like to know.
Okay. I'll need a second to find those numbers for you.
Because, yeah, when I look at this and we're saying we just need to take out 117,000, what number are we pulling it from?
$3,008,000. That's my understanding.
the total CRA budget for
Right.
proposed CIP budget.
That's how John instructed me before he left.
This year's CRA budget versus the entire 25 to 29 period.
We're only talking about fiscal year 24, 25.
Right,
Yeah.
okay.
So I have a good way to summarize it and think of it. So at middle of the road, where the general fund millage is 3.4519, we can afford all the projects in the CRA, CIP budget and CRA budget.
Perfect.
So if we change that and go down to rollback, which would be the 3.3199 number, then you'd have to take out, then you would lose about 60,000 in revenue. And if it went down to that 3.2 number, which is below rollback, then you'd lose 117,000 in revenue.
Perfect. That,
That was a missing piece. That's the below rollback rate.
the middle of the road rate of 3.4519 supports this budget that we're looking at. That second number, rollback, 3.3199?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Is rollback. And we're talking, 3.2. Okay, so got it. The 117,000, or no, I'm sorry, 60,000. 61,000 at the 3.31 would need to come off, and then 117,000. Council, or Board Member Willis,
What?
did you have
But the 3.4519 supported the 1.2 for the presidential streets, correct?
The 1.2.
For the presidential streets CRA, we brought that down to 1.2. Was that was because of the middle of the road rate, correct? Or was that the initial higher end rate of 1.6?
No, in that 1.6 number, 300,000 of that is engineering or some other fees, so that
Right.
is in that number. I think we did take 50,000 off of it to help balance the budget.
Right. But when we were discussing at the last budget meeting, it was brought up that that number was going to change to 1.2 million, and it would be updated in the next budget book in September. What is the millage rate that is associated with that 1.2 million?
With that, that would be the proposed, it would be the 3.415.
Okay, all right. So at 3.415, we're really looking at $2,608,000.
I'm sorry, I'm not following that.
All right, because the 3,000,008 means we're looking at 1.6 million for the presidential streets. But if we were bringing that down 400,000, then the total CRA is 2.608.
That, yes,
Okay?
yes.
All right, that's,
I will bring the most updated CIPs up really quick so I can confirm, but yes, that logic is correct.
okay.
So it's going to bring it down for all of the years for the CRA through 2029 is what I'm hearing. Is that
No,
correct?
no, it's just bringing it down for next year.
Okay.
which certainly impacts the,
The future, but,
Right.
yeah.
Okay. Thank
But,
you.
but I don't think we need to confuse ourselves with what subsequent years are going to do.
so when you ask that question, the number that supports this 3,008,000 originally thought it was the the 3.4519, but then I hear a 3.415. Maybe I heard it wrong. What is the number that supports this?
The
Or
three
is that-
million eight, wouldn't that be the original?
Yes,
Three point
yes.
4519.
What is that millage rate, Joey?
3.4519 for the general fund.
4519.
So yes, I can confirm, Councilmember Willis, you are correct. That was before we figured out what the county's millage rate would be. And when we did, we had to take it down the 400,000. So the new numbers would be 400,000 minus that.
Okay.
Okay, so it wasn't it was based off of, once we verified the other numbers, that it really didn't change the millage rate. We just had to
Right.
adjust the expected revenues based on that rate. Thank you very much for clarifying all that. So today, we have a rollback rate of 3.3199. The total CRA for 24-25 should say 2.6 million, is that right? Okay, so it's really 2.6 million. And then we can reduce the 2.6 by $61,000 to go to rollback rate, or 117,000 to go to slightly below rollback rate. Now that I think we've got that, is out of the $2.6 million, I mean, because of revenue reduction to 61,000 at rollback rate, I think that's attainable. And I would like to see us, I mean, as a percentage of budget, 2.6 million, and I know some of these costs are opinion of probable costs, like the Civic Hub and Presidential Streets, Civic Hub, I think. If we reduce, we need to find the projects where we can do that. That's the task that I think you need. So with that, and then once I think if we can identify some, separately, we can decide if we want to do that. I've said enough? Board Member Jackson, Willis, Davis?
And the one thing I wanted to mention is the fact that we don't have enough to fully fund some of these projects in the CRA. Todd and I discussed that. So with Presidential Street, we really don't even know how much that will be. Have we had any clue since I talked to you about that,
Tim,
City Manager?
do you have that number, the opinion of probable cost for Fillmore?
There we go. Okay. I don't actually have a opinion of probable costs until they actually know what we're doing with the road for Fillmore. So I have guesstimated on how much it's going to cost per what we've received per Oak Lane and on my knowledge itself. But to get an opinion of probable cost on Fillmore Avenue, we will need to make a decision on what we're actually doing. How deep we're going, what kind of utilities we're going to be changing out and stuff like that.
All that information, it comes from that proposal that you just received from Kimley Horn?
Correct.
So they don't give an opinion of probable cost in that document?
Not until we have them do the work, correct.
Certain decisions have to be made first?
Correct.
I see.
Correct.
But you believe that 1.6 isn't going to be enough for Fillmore?
I think we can do part of it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's consistent, Kay, with what you and I were talking about.
Right, and I just wanted to make sure we were all aware of that as we look at what we are really going to do. Because what we decide today is, of course, going to impact next year's budget if we're not able to fully fund one presidential street at this time.
But we can allocate money for that following year's presidential street.
Right, right. But I just want to make sure we're looking at that today and the fact that one full street will not be finished. And we have 16 of those streets to finish, and we won't have enough years or CRA money to do that. So as we look at this presidential street project and the length of the project, not knowing what's going to happen 5, 10 years from now, if we had to stop because we didn't have the funds, or people had low tolerance for increasing taxes to get the funds since the CRA money would run out, are we, what would we do? What would council have to look at as alternatives or options if we run out of funds doing those? And we're going to run out of funds. We don't have the funds in the CRA for that full length of time to do all of those streets. So we'd really need to look at which ones we want to define and the time frame and which ones are most important and prioritize. But it's still not going to give our city the exact same look and feel on all those presidential streets.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
in looking at this, if we were to take the Civic Hub project and the Presidential Streets project and focus purely on stormwater, where we're utilizing the Civic Hub for stormwater issues, and we take portions of the Presidential Street on Fillmore to assist in that stormwater issue. All right, we're reducing the stormwater, which impacts all of the southerly presidential streets. It will assist in all of that. We may not be able to even do a total presidential street redo, or maybe we need to push that thought process back a year, resolve stormwater. The Civic Hub, if it takes us 8, 10 years to realize the entire vision, okay, but I think if we're focused on reducing stormwater, it improves quality of life on all the presidential streets. And we may, in that, we may find funds to help with Oak Lane. We might even have to look at the concession stand in order to do Oak Lane as well. But I think priority should be stormwater and utilizing what we have and reducing the stormwater.
Thank you. Yes, Board Member Jackson.
I just wanted to check, and we spoke during the last budget meeting about the potential project that I had discussed with Todd and with Tim about getting some of that water off of, what street is that, Tim? Magnolia, thank you. And it as a test project because it's lower cost. Todd, and excuse me, Mr. City Manager, sorry about that. Did you happen to bring that street diagram that you had? I wish,
No, but I'm sure Tim could grab it.
because that is a super helpful thing to look at as we talk about stormwater, because if that works in one spot, city manager had shown me how they identified and took a look at some of the other areas that may assist. And so if we could get that to where you all, where council could see it, if people didn't see it, I'd love for them to see that.
Tim, maybe you could email it to Mia and Mia can pull it up on the screen.
Is it saved in Common Docs somewhere? Or in Elizabeth?
And it definitely speaks exactly to what Board Member Willis is saying as far as stormwater, in some ways that we can get it off the streets without being able to complete a presidential street project.
You said that was Magnolia?
Yes. Well, the city manager and Tim have identified a lot of areas within our city that we can remove water from the streets where we have too much pavement. And, you know, the Mead Hunt said we had too much initially, and, you know, the entire Presidential Street projects were to get water off the streets. So the map that they're going to show us really, when I saw that, it really looks like we can make an impact with a much smaller budget if the first one works.
Thank you.
So can I ask, so Member
Member Davis?
Jackson, so what you're saying is if what you want to do is take some project off and add that to the budget, or what are you trying to?
No, we had discussed adding this anyway, as a test and doing it from the stormwater funds. But as Board Member Willis was speaking to stormwater and our focus there, I wanted to make sure you all saw this because we've worked on this. Now, you see all the blue and purple sections. The city manager went through and they defined the sections. And city manager, if you'll discuss the color difference and everything for everyone so I don't mess it up.
And this is just a design concept. These are not engineering drawings. What we did was we went on the assumption that Kimley-Horn told us that any presidential street work would be an east to west on the presidential street, but would go north to south on the north-south streets, only 75 feet north and 75 feet to the south. So that defined a project area on any north-south street in between those two 75-foot extents. So, for instance, if, I'll wait till Mia's ready to zoom in. The blue is the safe zone. So anything that you see that's blue, that is not only the safe zone that's not going to be touched by a Kimley-Horn project, but it's also where we have 100% impervious. So Mia, if we could zoom in on that, almost in the center of the screen. Come down, pull it down a little bit. No, stay zoomed in. Zoom in some more. Now pull it down. Pull it to the left. All right there. Okay, so no, now go back up. No. Pull it back up. Pull it back up. Pull it back up. Now go to the left. All right, right there. So right there in the very center of the screen, you see a lot of purple and blue. The blues, for instance, on Magnolia that Tim was talking about, that is a potential project pilot area that's solid impervious that would not interfere theoretically with any Kimley-Horn presidential street. The purple is showing that, well, that's also impervious too, but that would potentially interfere with a presidential street. So the blues are the safe zones. The purples are, we could be getting into something that could mess with a presidential street in the future. The idea that Mrs. Jackson is talking about is doing a blue, any one of those given blues. There's several large ones that we could choose from to do, but perhaps we should start on Magnolia, just north of Fillmore there, because that's definitely 100% impervious. So the thought is if we cut out a portion of that impervious, it's in the city's right-of-way, we have the authority and we control the right-of-way, put back in a pervious product in there that allows them to still park over it and see what it does and what kind of impact that has in removing stormwater flow into the curb that ultimately goes to this most strained area of the Fillmore street in the Center Street Basin.
And as it was explained to me, if you look at the green, those are our stormwater pipes. So right now, if you look at that Taylor and the corner of Magnolia, there's 3 drains there. It goes in, look where and Tim showed me this. Look where it turns left and look where it ends up. Right in the low spot in front of the Fillmore townhouses where it flooded. And I'm not sure what that little mess of pipes is in front of that and how that would help drainage.
Those are called under drains, 8-inch under drains. They appear to have been put in at some year after the original work was done to help relieve, it was a known problem then.
Trying to
help
relieve it.
yeah.
So if we can, as Tim had explained it to me, if we can get that out of the green pipe, the blue areas would drain naturally down through the ground instead of going into the stormwater pipes. And that's been really successful with the rain garden, if you think of how much water it's gotten off the street there, doing a natural type of draining. So that's what we have been looking at. And as we talk about stormwater and money, these projects, Tim, you had kind of looked at potential costs on these ballpark.
Yeah, I got the numbers upstairs. I believe what we were doing was a 200, we had originally wanted to do a 268-foot area, and it came out to about $140,000. So I can take that and break it down per linear footage and come up with a price. Now, of course, that was a couple of years ago. So I do expect an increase, a small increase probably, due to inflation, but nothing major.
But one thing we also need to consider is there's a machine to clean this type of pavement. And we already have it in our city, and we don't have the machine. So, Tim, would you speak to that so we know that situation as well?
There's different machines that I've looked at. Of course, you've got, the deluxe model all the way to $500,000, and then you've got a little small model all the way to $45,000. The $45,000 is like a little SUV. Kind of looks like a lawnmower with a vacuum on it, and it literally vacuums all the pervious pavement up. If you don't maintain it, of course, we're killing our infrastructure that we're pouring money into, because then it'll stop working along the years. The middle of the line was a Triveris. It's called a Triveris, and it's on a little Bobcat chassis. I don't remember exactly how much it was. And then you have the full-fledged, it looks like a street sweeper, but it's called a pure vacuum sweeper. The thing with this is that a regular sweeper will not take care of the pervious pavement. It will just mix in the dirt into the pavement itself. And so what you really need is a vacuum sweeper. I have actually called around to a lot of places in Florida, and it seems not to be a hot commodity right now, so nobody really has one, but you can buy them. But yes, you are right. When you start putting this kind of material in throughout the city, you have to maintain it or it loses its value.
And where do we have it currently within the city?
It's about 6 years ago, I put Flexi Pave down North Atlantic Avenue on a lot of the curves and stuff.
Cumberland.
We also have it on the south side of Canaveral City Park.
Yes, we have some there. And then we're about to get our first ever pervious pavers down at the end of Center Street at Center Street Park. We took the old pavers out, and we're getting ready to try the pervious paver system, which will be really interesting. So that will need cleaning as well, vacuuming every now and then.
So that I just wanted to put out there for the board's consideration, because, we can't finish an entire presidential street, and it's going to take a long time and a lot of money to do all 16 to have the same look and feel throughout the city. And we needed, and y'all know I'm really into, we need to do stormwater things now. I've been focusing on this. So we need the cleaning machine already because of the fact we already have these surfaces within the city. And once again, I'm also focused on whatever we have, we need to maintain. And so these were some options and a trial, and Tim and the city manager has been working with me trying to get a feel for this so that if we did one test and it works, we could, possibly have some alternatives until we get all the presidential streets completed.
And I would just add to that we talked about doing a pilot project because there's other costs. A survey is going to be necessary. Obviously, we want to know of any utilities that are going to be in the area. We don't want to break anything that we do. And possibly maybe some other engineering work on a per project basis. We thought if we picked one as a project, a pilot, and see how it goes, then we get our arms around how much is this going to cost if we do more in the future. And the original idea was to use existing stormwater funds for this too, as opposed to CRA funds.
But as we look at CRA and with Board Member Willis's comment on focusing on stormwater, I wanted you all to see this because if we do this with a pilot, one pilot project and see if it works, and we're doing it under stormwater, then that may change how we want to deal with our CRA funds. So sorry I interrupted you. I
Tim,
don't
do
think
you
I
know
did.
of any cities or counties that utilize this?
I do know that Cocoa Beach had a pilot project that had a flooding issue on one road, and Jessica from Ferguson took us, me and Zach, out there and showed us how it worked, and they haven't had an issue since. It was
it's been
it was a
effective.
porous concrete. I also know that I went and did a demo, or went to see a demo from AFC, which is a stormwater component, like pervious paver. And I was just explaining this today. They had opened up a fire hydrant and it didn't reach across the road. That's how fast it soaked it into the ground. So,
So it's effective.
yeah, it's very effective. As long as you keep it clean.
Thank you.
And I just want to bring it back. We're at 5:07 PM. Thank you, Tim. I probably might have more questions. Take a seat if you choose, unless, do you have a question, Board Member Willis?
Yeah, I do.
Tim's going to get mad at me now. Sorry, Tim. I'm sorry.
No, I want to see him get up and down. We have vaulted systems in the C5, do we not?
I believe we do, yes.
The softball
I'm not
field,
sure exactly what.
the softball field, the exfiltration system.
Oh, the trunk, yes.
Yeah, right.
That part, yes.
Do we ever have any flooding in that area?
Not really.
Okay, so
Not really.
that test case works.
Sure.
Okay.
We also use it for reuse. When we have too much reuse, instead of going out to the river, we fill the system with reuse. So
Did
that,
we have flooding in that area before?
I can't speak to that. I was here hired after they were already put in, so I'm not sure exactly.
Harrison Avenue and the areas around the ball fields flooded, but that 1,000,000 gallons, I think, right? Is the
Yeah,
capacity?
900 and something.
Yeah, really awesome. So we just want to bring it back. I know Vice Chair hasn't had a chance to speak as well, and just comment on the big picture here. Rollback rate, if we reduce it, we see some costs. Everything I'm hearing so far before the Vice Chair, my initial feedback is yes, presidential streets was defined as kind of everything that you could possibly do to make the streets better, and it's community surveys, and it's just a beautiful, complete street with, stormwater amenities. But if we had to rank, signs, lights, issues with safety, and then, throw flooding in there, stormwater, flooding's going to be, I think, a top expenditure within the presidential street. So fully agreed on doing the flooding portion of the presidential streets first. And then, whether it be, love the idea of testing different applications, but to me, it's more about, I think the how, we will figure that out. What I do know is that if we spend it not on flooding, I don't know if that's going to help it. And so I just want to give some comment, agreed with everything I'm hearing. Vice Chair Kellum.
Thank you. I just brought this up at the last meeting. We had talked about Oak Lane, which we've been trying to pave since I've been here in 2019. I brought it to the council. And I brought it to the council because the little restaurant there, La Cantina, at the corner, flooded 3 or 4 times, with the water runoff from North Atlantic. And when I was running for council, he asked me to please see if I could push them fixing the the road there, so his business would stop flooding. I asked back then if it could be a CRA fund, and I was told no. And I think, it's been kicked down the road for years. I did research on and looked it up, and even the mayor, Jameson, had requested that Oak Lane be paved, how many years ago was that? Also, I worked with the residents there. There was some controversy. Did they want it? Did they not want it? I met with them a few times. They all are on board. They want it, and they want the recycled water, the reclaimed water. They want that for their lawns. We said that we could do that. That helps reduce our reclaimed water in the city. I just think it's, my major thing is I would like to reduce the money in the general fund, that 550, and do it through the CRA, which in our CRA plan, it's most about roads and, fixing the things in the city that need to be done with the CRA funds. I believe, I think that it's important, the stormwater component on the presidential streets, absolutely. But where, do we know, with the Veterans Park Rain Garden, with the new pump, with the projects that Tim's talking about, the little pieces here and there, how that will affect the stormwater on the streets. I believe, I am all for the Civic Hub. I just think that this should be the year that we finish the things that have been kicked down the road for many years and let the poor people on Oak Lane have a paved road. If you've ever been down there when it's rains, it doesn't flood, but the potholes are big enough for your car to sink in. And it's not a great place for them to live. They pay taxes too. I think, like the general idea was to help the restaurant that's been there 30 years now, and has contributed to our city, as far as, making donations to baseball leagues and things like that. They're good, it's a good little business, mom and pop place. So that's where this started, and I think it's just time to finish the things that we've started. And yes, the Civic Hub is very important. And I think it will be a great addition to our city. But, it took how many years for Veterans Park to get done? I don't think the stormwater portion of it is important, but I think with these other things we're working on, it may alleviate the flooding. So that's where I'm coming from. I just would like to see Oak Lane come out of the general fund and be put in the CRA. And maybe we could, the presidential streets, I think, is down to 1.2 million. That's a big undertaking. But I just think that, kicking the can down the road again would be not fair to the residents on Oak Lane that it's been in the budget for 5 years. And I think it's just time to get things done that we have been putting off and, prioritize where we are and get things done that we haven't gotten done yet. And that's where I'm coming from.
Thank you, Vice Chair Kellum. The cost on the Oak Lane project as of today estimated was
At budget of 850, Tim? 806,000. So 550 would be that general fund or CRA, and the remainder would come out of stormwater.
Say that last part one more time, please.
The remainder would come out of stormwater enterprise,
So how much would need to come out of the CRA?
550.
$550,000? Okay. Total project cost is $806,000, which,
Which is under what we expected it to be.
okay. So the question, Vice Chair Kellum, I agree, Oak Lane has been it's been a while.
A long time.
And if we can, it's about putting 550,000 out of the 2.6 million right today. And so if we added it in without reducing anything, we'd be, yeah, about where it's showing now. I think if we were to look at the projects, there's a few small ones in there under, the one at the top, CR1, Canaveral City Park redevelopment, the traffic safety public art installations, Canaveral Fire Rescue Station, the lightning protection system. So those three are $43,000, the CR1, 2, and 5. CR1, 2, and 5 are right, 40.
1, 4, and 5, Mayor.
145 or $43,000.
Yep, that looks right.
Okay. The next is the concession stand. That's another thing that we had a concession stand. I know that you've been proponent of that, and it was removed. To me, that's not really a new. Of course, it would be a new concession stand, but you're replacing what was removed. If we can make that work, the 315, I think that's really good. We're at 367,000. And none of those are really flooding or anything. However, assuming those are in, that pretty much leaves the two big ones, 2.4 million we have. And if we add in the 550,000, we really got a couple million, less than 1.9, 1.8 million left over. In my opinion, we would the Civic Hub project, you would pull from that, just for visual, to pay for Oak Lane. And that leaves 500,000. I would take the 500,000 out of the budget, and that would leave 1.2 million to work on flooding. However, it is defined as a priority. That's for 24, 25. I would not rename the items or anything. I would just say Civic Hub, you would remove the amount you want to spend this year, put it in a future date, or strike it. It was a midterm 2 to 7 year project that we acquired quickly. Now I think we can do it, and I appreciate that. Those are my comments. I think we can pay for it. I would think that the Civic Hub, $1 million there, half of that roughly should go to a higher priority, Oak Lane.
You can go first.
And we still have 500,000 in the ARPA fund for the Civic Hub. That's designated for that, so it would be that as well.
In ARPA, another point, ARPA was really about recovery from COVID and things. And so when and flooding and water was a big part of it. And so even more reason, point is can we maintain a below rollback rate? I think we can, and there's plenty of room left over to make that happen for the purposes of this meeting, CRA. Council, or Board Member Willis?
Well, if you're redirecting funds or reallocating funds, if you're classifying Presidential Street being Fillmore, which was part of Kimley Horn's design in connection with the Civic Hub, you can still take those funds to reduce stormwater along Fillmore utilizing the Civic Hub. However those funds could go.
And I had an idea after the, I'm
Let me
sorry.
make sure I got that.
I'm not through.
Sorry, I apologize.
Okay. Because we've reduced the presidential streets down to 1.2, and if you're taking the Civic Hub down to 550, then you've got 1.7 million possibly to put towards stormwater utilizing the Civic Hub property, which to me would make a larger impact quicker on our stormwater issues and cover a greater area. And Tim is nodding his head, so if he is agreeing with me, please let me know.
No, I'll speak on it real fast. So what Kimley Horn was planning on doing with both of these projects is having them hold hands, whereas where they would do the stormwater components of Fillmore and help tie them into the underground chambers that they were proposing for the Civic Hub area. Both of them were mostly stormwater related components in all reality to hold hands. I think that's what you're saying, right?
Right, and plus, we still have that issue in front of the townhomes on Fillmore, which, if you're tying all this in together.
A lot of it would be going into that area.
Yes, okay.
Yes, that's what the two quotes from Kimley Horn were to engineer, design both the underground stormwater chambers for the Civic Hub in the amount of $149,000, and then $298,000, I believe, for the presidential street to not only do stormwater related components, but to also possibly change out underground stormwater pipes and stuff like that, and see if we can redirect a lot of that stormwater in that area into the Civic Hub area, getting the proper slopes.
Well, given that property on Fillmore, which is the lowest point, water's collecting down there,
Correct.
so it needs to be moving out. I'm done.
Thank you. Board Member Davis?
I'm not sure that I'm comfortable with taking Oak Lane and putting it into the CRA. We need to keep the CRA funds very healthy for other things that are going on. Stormwater is the issue, so I'm not for getting rid of anything to do with the hub. I think the hub is important as far as the stormwater issue. And, I'm not looking to go to rollback, just so you're aware. So I'm not willing to cut. You're talking about, we're putting, just keep putting things down the road. Well, you're talking about cutting the majority of what our projects are. So I'm not willing to put them down the road. If we go middle of the road, then we can keep everything and do our projects and keep the stormwater and Fillmore. Well, the hub at Fillmore. So I'm not comfortable necessarily putting Oak Lane in the CRA, or the capital improvement, sorry.
Thank you. Board Member Jackson?
Yes, I made a trip over to the Nancy Hansen and to the tennis courts this week. And that court that was brought up, the surface is really bad, and that one court is literally bowing and things like that. So I was curious, because I know there's a stormwater plan for the Civic Hub, but I was wondering, are any of the storage tanks going to be under the tennis courts? Because that court, and having spoken to Molly, it's had problems in the past, and they've said it needs to be foundation taken out and redone. Well, if we have this thing that needs maintenance and we haven't gotten that done yet, if we do just that section and then resurface the entire courts, that could be included in the the CRA for this time, and it would be even better if we had some storm drainage tanks under it, if we had to bring the base up. Molly, would you come speak to this section of the court for me? I was thinking about that, and I'm like, that would be a good way to pull in resurfacing something, the tennis courts, to where they're more serviceable for our players and better condition, and potentially be able to do something quicker with stormwater there as well until we get the bigger projects that Board Member Willis has mentioned in play as well. So, Molly.
Mr. Chair, could I interrupt just for a second?
Yes,
I just
sir.
want to point out that the $115,000 in Parka 4 is for that project. We've already seen that in the CIP, to do the excavation necessary underneath court number 5 and resurface, reconstruct court number 5, resurface all of the courts. That's what all that's for in the general fund. That $115,000 project is for all of that.
And that's for this year?
It's in the proposed 24-25 general fund budget.
Okay. And so if we're bringing that part of the tennis court surface up, would some of the stormwater tanks in that area?
When we first started talking about stormwater tanks at the Civic Hub, what we were steering Kimley Horn away from were anything that would be unnecessarily removing an amenity. So, for instance, you're not going to tear up Nancy Hansen and put, you're not going to tear up trees and put, no, you're not going to do that. We also said, don't look at tennis courts first, because you've got green space out here that you can look at before that. So my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, Molly, is that there wasn't, and still to this day, no plan for underground storage vault tanks under any of the tennis courts for that reason.
That was only just discussed in the planning phases. But that also was discussed before we knew for a fact that we needed to remove 172 square feet minimum from the contractors that came out and gave the bid. So
Right,
if you
but-
are tearing it up, it's an opportunity.
That's
but
one court.
That
but-
is just that one section of court.
Right, and the other courts don't need to be torn up.
No.
So how much stormwater vaulting could get under one court? And you got to get the stormwater there too, to that court. So that's why I don't know how feasible it would be. It may be, it may not be, but my understanding was the green space areas are perfectly eligible for this. Why would we tear up a tennis court?
Okay.
Yeah.
And the shuffleboard.
And shuffleboard court, but that is the area that was tentatively proposed for the stage area,
Band shell.
band shell stage.
Event lawn.
So we didn't want any vertical improvements on top of the storm tanks.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we are at 5:30 PM here. Let's just take a couple things side by side. I mean, it is my opinion that stormwater is very important. As I've said in the past, I have not, and I do believe improving stormwater at the Civic Hub will obviously help. I am not, or have not seen that is the best way to use CRA money to fix stormwater challenges. There could be another $50,000, $200,000, one block to the west, or a pump or a piece of equipment or something. I don't bear the burden to figure that out today either, but I do accept that I don't know. And so I have a bit of a reluctancy to just say yes. However, knowing that we own property over time strategically, like we were talking about Parks and Recs, I think that without disrupting amenities such as trees and things and or services we provide, yes, let's do stormwater. And with that, though, the Civic Hub, for what it was budgeted for, was largely not for those things. And so I think it's important to recognize, and I'm not talking about the $43,000 in those projects, but out of the big ones, that one, as far as a community need, as far as meeting blight, as the CRA says, that project is not justified, in my opinion, to be the highest priority project, and that's why it was a medium-term 2 to 7 year goal. Step one, acquire it, has happened. to jam stormwater in under, an area where you can, I would rather, if council wants to move that one forward, do it right, not just keep it alive for the sake of just stormwater. I'm for making progress on the civic hub, just for the sake of all the wonderful things that could offer. There's no denying that, but it just doesn't make sense today. Oak Lane makes 100% sense to me today. And so I would like to first see if we have, I think that the best way to do this is to take it's 1.4, so to take the civic hub and push it forward a year you can keep the same amount of money, but for this year, we should add in a line item called Oak Lane, or move it, and put the $550,000 there, and then have the presidential streets 1.2 million focused on, that's how much money we're willing to put in to do a variety, one project, many projects, some tests, some pilots. 1.2 million goes with that, and we got 500,000 left over, and we don't have to, if we're gonna spend that money on anything, hold it, pay, and have it ready to see these big if statements. Yes, we need to see if they can redirect the water, if that's going to work. And so have that money ready. Doesn't have to be spent. And it would give us plenty of room to reduce taxes. So those are my thoughts, something that I think the community needs. I'm willing to do Oak Lane. I do think Civic Hub needs to be pushed out. What the minimal cost on Civic Hub, if there's a next step minimal cost that makes everyone feel better, we can do that. But for me, this year, I don't see that being a project, and that gives us enough money to get Oak Lane and leave $500,000. So thank you. Board Member Davis.
I'm kind of confused here because Tim has said that the Presidential Street and Oak Lane, and the Civic Hub should be done at the same time. They're sister projects. So if you cut out the Civic Hub, when we go to do it in the future, it's going to cost more to get it done. So I don't understand why we just wouldn't do them at the same time. Otherwise, it's going to cost you more because they're going to they're trying to include them both, right? Correct? At the same time?
Because we have to pay for flooding things. These aren't flooding projects. This is
It's stormwater
2.4 million that's going to go largely to not flooding.
It's stormwater projects, yes.
If we read the CR2 budget sheet on what the million is, yes, a portion of it, right? But the Civic Hub Grand Plan is an amenity.
Well, we knew it would go in stages, and the first stage was for stormwater. So we knew we weren't going to get it done overnight, and it would take several years.
Yes,
Well, I think there'll still be stormwater funds there. There'll be the 500 left
But you're,
and the other ARPA money, another 500,000. So we could sister the two projects together and have that money deal with the stormwater part of the project.
Also, Nancy Hansen needs work bad.
Yes.
It needs a new roof, it needs soffit and fascia. It's got electrical from it seems like the 60s. So that's an existing piece of our community up there that is still going to be part of that civic center, and it needs work.
Yes, it does.
And the outside looks fine, but seriously, the inside needs to be stepped up and needs to be renovated and look great. And, so it is part of the, maintenance of things that hasn't had any attention as well. It needs a new roof.
Agreed. Board Member Willis?
Yeah, I've got photos of the electrical problems that we actually have employees sitting there in front of that.
Yeah. Pretty
That we
scary.
need to, and there's also photos of the building.
Are these all the same? Oh, okay, we'll packet for each.
Yeah, there's a packet. Photos of the building, the tennis court, et cetera, things that need to be done. There's an extra one for public records, or Todd. If we were going to remove funds from the general fund and switch things over to the CRA, I'd like to see those funds that we did have in the general fund go to fixing what we have existing over there in the Nancy Hanson area. I mean, that needs work. I mean, if you look at the electrical picture, I mean, there's duct tape and cardboard.
I am all about that. I think that
I mean, that, to me, yeah, yes, I'm just as passionate over stormwater as council member, as board member Jackson. But if we're going to redirect some funds, let's fix some real things. And, you know, these are easily identifiable, real things that need to be upgraded and fixed, and make the people that use our facilities happy.
And that goes back to, let's take care of what we have.
Yeah.
And that is what needs to happen. Before we build new things, we need to maintain. We need to address some of these things. And one thing, when I visited the Nancy Hanson and the tennis courts and everything, it was an off-peak period this week, not even, it was a Friday. And I'm going to tell you something, it was busy. There were a lot of people out there using those courts. That area generates the city some revenue back that helps with things, but we shouldn't ignore it. So, and truly, I mean, I'm appreciative that you shared the photos, because I was pretty astounded as somebody coming from the tech world on this electrical alone. But we could make that facility be a world-class situation, much nicer, where our people that utilize that would enjoy it, and it's something we've already got that hasn't had the attention.
Mr. Chair,
yes.
in order to make Nancy Hanson world-class, I think we would have to raise it, but I think this board and probably council doesn't have the stomach to maintain the civic hub or consider the civic hub as a stormwater resolution, but I would still like to see us considering it and keep that at the fore. But if we're going to bring funds out of this general fund, if we're going to reallocate a project out of the general fund into the CRA, I think we need to take general fund monies where we can and put them into Nancy Hanson, fix all of that. And that would be something that council will have to do with the September 3rd budget meeting.
Okay, so we're at $2.6 million. I would say, without getting, I mean, if it's, well, the next step with the Civic Hub, I mean, it was to spend $1 million on
Stormwater improvements.
the stormwater improvements. If we took those specific improvements and moved them to next year, right? It's really about this year's budget so we can move forward. So instead of even debating the amount, if that's what it is, all I'm saying is move that next year. And honestly, every year we can look at it and decide, but there's a point where that becomes the highest priority, the stormwater needs to be done. Well, that frees up $1 million in this year. And so that $1 million, half of it could pay for Oak Lane. And then we could put $100,000 into improving Nancy Hansen. New roof, new electrical, and take the other $400,000 and reduce your expenses so we can provide a meaningful savings to the big global problem of inflation. Until we reduce expenses and taxes, we're not going to do our part. And we can do it this year. There's plenty of money, and we don't need to, I think, redirect the general fund. There's plenty right there, and to reduce it. And so if it's 2.6, can we get it down to 2.2, 2.3? But basically fund the Nancy Hansen improvement, make that a CR7 project, CR8, Oak Lane, and then take Civic Hub, move it forward a year. And we can have a 100,000 into Nancy Hansen, 515 or whatever it was for that, that's 600,000, $400,000 reduce, and do a, and I think that's a good thing.
Well,
We're at
this is
542.
The pictures are definitely, what the CRA is for is to fix blight. Poor Nancy Hansen is blight.
Well, Mr. Chair,
Yes,
we actually don't know exactly what that's going to cost.
but we got $100,000 we can put towards it, and I think that's gonna fix the roof. I know it'll do that. And I know there's, and, well, the registered agent, did you get any estimate on cost for Nancy Hansen when we were talking about that?
No, sir.
That can be, I think, estimated. Yeah.
But I wonder if it could be provided by September 3rd.
But even if it couldn't, why can't we just say, make $100,000 in improvements?
That's fine.
And there's contingencies, there's money in other places. The city manager has authority within the fund to move money over. Yeah, if,
Mr. Chair?
yes.
I'm sensitive to your comment that we're running out of time, and I'm just trying to gather some consensus for the minutes, and so that the Finance Department knows what to be prepared for. As I understand it, there may be consensus here for CR2, which is a Civic Hub, to move to fiscal year 25-26, that entire amount of $1,050,000. There may be consensus to add a new CR7 for Nancy Hansen Recreational Rehabilitation of $100,000. Put that in 24-25. There may be consensus for creating a new CR8 for Oak Lane in the CRA for $550,000. If that's all correct, I would just ask for clarity on, is there any desire to move anything else? CR1, which is Canaveral Park redevelopment, CR4, traffic safety, public art, CR5, the lightning protection, and CR6, the concession stand. Is there possibly consensus to leave those as is, as proposed? If so, then the only thing I would need clarity on is the remaining reductions that may result from going to below rollback would come out of CR3, presidential streets.
We should have plenty of room
Yeah.
for that to not happen.
Yep.
I did not, I mean, are those three smaller projects? I think what you said, I'm okay with, unless I haven't heard the council on these other projects as much. I know Board Member Jackson expressed some concern, but
Well, I would like to push the public art installation because I think we need to do some traffic studies. We're having a lot more traffic in our area. Last Sunday, we had 528 completely shut down both directions, caused a massive traffic jam. And then yesterday, we ended up having a rollover on 528. So distracted driving seems to be a thing that it might be an issue out there in our world today. So it concerns me putting art in the middle of an intersection, personally. So that one is not a have-to-have type of item. I would like to push that one out for consideration later, so that we could even look at some studies, also look at the maintenance cost, because paint fades, and this is art, so you'd have to repaint it when it fades, and look at location and things like that, and take a little more consideration before we do anything with that one. So that one I'd like to push out.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
the traffic safety public art installations would be on city streets, not on the state's roads, so it would be under a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit. But I have no problem with pushing it out, but I would love to see the 15,000 go toward Nancy Hansen.
I agree.
I agree.
Okay, that puts a 15% contingency, right? So Board Member Davis?
I'm fine with that.
Okay, so what you said, I think you could maybe say it with that
Sure.
amendment.
What was the amount for Nancy Hansen?
You Take out the,
Go ahead, Vice Chair.
take out the traffic safety public and take that 15,000 and add it to the 100,000 that we,
115.
so it would be 115 to start Nancy Hansen.
Okay, so let me recap my understanding. CR2, we would move to 2526. CR4, we would move to 2526. We would add a new CR7 for Nancy Hansen at 115,000. We would add a new CR8 for Oak Lane at 550,000. And then we would reduce presidential streets with whatever remaining cuts need to come out of the CRA budget. That,
Oh, excuse me.
yeah.
I've never been asked about consensus, so I don't think that I've agreed to anything on consensus. I may be, whatever, but I will not, I'm against removing the Civic Hub.
Well, I think we're just making sure we're getting all the changes. I think.
Yeah, but-
I'm fine with that, but understood.
He said that we had consensus to do, and
Oh.
I don't think we've ever done a consensus.
Sorry, I didn't mean to say
Yes.
we had consensus.
Sorry.
I'm-
I just
I'm-
wanted to clarify, I didn't do it.
And the city attorney brought up a good point that moving the CR2 out to 2526 leaves that $1,050,000 gap. We know 550 is coming out of that for Oak Lane, but there's still other monies in the Civic Hub that gap that need to come out. So I think better said is move CR2, move CR4, add CR7, add CR8, and then whatever has to be reduced come out of the remainder of the Civic Hub first for 2526, and if more is needed, come out of the presidential streets.
But yeah, CR7 and 8 add-ons, we know the estimated cost of those roughly. The goal would be to reduce the budget, not spend all of it.
Yeah.
And fill it with projects.
So however it shakes out, if we manage to, next time we see this, we're moving those two, we're adding those two, we'll know what's left for civic, or for presidential streets or any other remaining funds. Whatever that undesignated balance is, we can decide at the next CRA board meeting in September.
Yeah, it should be 300,000 or 400,000.
Yeah,
Thank you.
undesignated currently. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm sorry, city attorney?
Right, the undesignated characterization is correct. That's undesignated?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, And the goal was to find some room so we could reduce the revenue. I like that.
Address it at the end of each fiscal year.
Do you have to earmark pay off debt, though? Or is that?
No, it could be designated for a specific project. It just can't be held in a kitty with no designation whatsoever. Otherwise, when you look at the TIF statute, there's a possibility where the money goes back to the taxing agencies and undesignated, because you don't.
And I think
It all
they'll get
works
it
itself out.
fine-tuned.
Yeah, it all gets fine-tuned through the budget process, but, you know, that's why CRAs tend to be very specific with with regard to its designation of funds.
Thank you. Board Member Willis?
No, he fully defined it for me. Thank you.
I think yes, what you said, moving items 2 and 4 over?
Adding 7 and 8,
Yep,
and then the remainder undesignated for now to be designated at the September CRA Board meeting.
thank you. I think
We just
that's,
ask for consensus, if there's consensus on that.
on all of those moves at
Yes.
once, does everyone understand? And do we have consensus? Any opposed? Okay,
I'll read that as consensus, thank you.
thank you. Okay, 553, if there's, I think that's a success as far as getting through what we needed. You have the clarity. Joey, thank you very much and really appreciate your help and everyone who made this. Any final comments before we adjourn and head into the next one? Okay. Motion to adjourn.
Make a motion, we adjourn?
Second.
Meeting adjourned.